With us tonight, Conservative finance critic Jasraj Singh Hallan and NDP finance critic Daniel Blakey. Hello to both of you. Thank you very much for making the time. I appreciate it. Mr. Hallan, I'm going to start with you. This deal, as you heard the minister outline, certainly requires a federal investment. My sources are telling me we're talking about billions of dollars over a period of about 10 years. Would the Conservatives cut a similar check to land a company like Volkswagen?
Look, Vassy, we're at another point where there's another announcement, but that's all it is. We don't have a clear plan on what it's going to take for Canadians to have good jobs and for a good investment to come into Canada. Conservatives have always been champions of the manufacturing industry, but if you listen to the minister just now, what we didn't hear from him was about the government regulations that are stopping from things getting built in this country. We don't know how long this project is going to take to build. We don't even know how many jobs it's going to create, let alone what kind of investment that they had to put in. And the minister also made a very interesting point when he said there are other deals that they're going to be looking at. What does that mean for Canadians? Does it mean how many more billions and billions of dollars are going to be pumped in for investment to come to Canada? Canada should have been in a position. After 8 years of Justin Trudeau, we see investment has been fleeing, not coming in. We should have had more things built. We should have had more industries thriving right now with more private industries wanting to come into Canada. But the number one issue that we see over and over again is a government regulation and uncertainty which is created by the government. They need to get those government gatekeepers out of the way so more can get built here, because this announcement on its own, how long is it going to take? No one knows. And how much is it going to cost taxpayers? Well, we don't even know that. There's just so much uncertainty behind it.
I just want to follow up with you on that, because you're correct that we don't know exactly how much they invested, nor how many jobs. We do know it's a gigafactory. I think it's hard to dispute this is a massive announcement for Canada. And so I take your point on the questions that need to be raised, but I'm going to circle back to the specific question I asked you, which is, would Conservatives also cut checks? I think it might be unfair to contextualize this as, just an environment Justin Trudeau created. The U.S. has brought in a very specific piece of legislation that offers subsidies for these types of things to be built there, large amounts of money. Does that not necessitate Canada countering? Does it not necessitate billions of dollars of investment? And are you saying that the Conservatives, if you form government, would not make those investments?
Well, first of all, the Conservatives would not have let Canada be in such an uncompetitive position where billions of dollars are now having to be pumped in to even get an uncertain number of jobs. We don't even have certainty on how long.
So you wouldn't cut this check? So you wouldn't cut a check to Volkswagen?
The Conservatives would not let Canada be in the position that it is in today. We need to make sure that projects are getting built. You look at the government hurdles that are there when it comes to even building any projects. By the Liberals' own admission, it can take up to 25 years for something to get built here. Canada is 64th in the world for how long it takes to build a project. And that isn't competitive whatsoever.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Our time is limited. I just want to make sure you're not answering the direct question, right? Which is, first of all, Volkswagen says this will be up and running by 2027. I think I incorrectly said 2021 off the top of the show. My mistake. 2027. My question to you is whether or not you believe the IRA necessitates a large-scale investment to the tune of billions of dollars. Would your party cut that check? Or are you saying you wouldn't?
What the IRA necessitates is for Canada to become more competitive, which means we need to get the government gatekeepers out of the way. We need to lower taxes and cut red tape so more can get built in Canada, that more investment can pour into Canada and become more competitive on a world stage. This isn't just about money, it's about results. And that's something that the government is great at dishing out money, but with very few results for Canadians, and all of their failures are costing more and more to Canadians. We need to have Canada in a position, and under a pure poly of government, Canada will become more competitive. We will get the government gatekeepers out of the way. We will lower red tape, and we will make sure that we keep taxes down so more investment wants to come into Canada and not bleed out like we've seen after the last 8 years of Justin Trudeau's failures on the economy.
Okay, I'm going to point out you didn't answer the specific question, but I take your points on the other stuff. Mr. Blakey, I want to ask you about the priorities that you've identified for the government. Your party has, for example, talked about pharmacare and the implementation of it. I believe the plan you pitched in the 2019 election, if I'm right, or maybe the 2021 election, the PBO assessed would cost, we're looking in the neighborhood at about $11 billion a year. Do you admit that countering the IRA at this juncture is more important than spending money on priorities like that, given the fiscal constraints around the federal government not wanting to further inflation?
Well, two things. So first I'll talk about pharmacare, and then I'll talk about the IRA. Pharmacare is a really important initiative because a lot of people are struggling right now to be able to afford the bills, and prescription drugs are a huge bill item. For as much as pharmacare would be a big spending item on the federal balance sheet, what's important to know is that Canadians are already spending that money on prescription drugs. And so what the PBO also said was that a national federally administered pharmacare plan would save Canadians $4 billion from what they're already spending on prescription drugs. So that is still a savings item for Canadians. And to the extent that it all comes back to one pocket, we would be saving money for people, not spending more money by having a pharmacare plan. With respect to the IRA, we absolutely do have to be competitive. And I have to say, listening to my conservative counterpart, I really don't think that they understand the nature of the competition that's going on right now. It's not, he's right, it's not just about money. It is also about money. And when you look at countries that are being really successful right now in the new energy economy and headed where the puck is going, whether it's Norway, Sweden, Germany, those are places where they have had governments that have worked with industry to have a real strategy, and workers, by the way, to have a strategy for what it looks like. And they have been intentionally investing public funds and creating an investment framework that's attracting private capital for a long time now. That's why they're so ahead of the game. The United States finally decided to get in the game, and that's why Canada has to get in the game. That will mean making some public investments, including some significant ones, in order to do well. So I think this can be seen as good news about the Volkswagen plant, but I do think that the Canadian government owes us transparency, and by us I mean Canadians generally, on a few fronts. One is they should be able to answer the question that you asked, Vassy, which is how much money is it for this particular project? But they also have to be a lot more transparent about what are the terms and conditions in terms of the number of jobs, but also what are those jobs going to pay? What kind of benefits are going to be associated with those jobs? That language is in the IRA about good union paying jobs. We fought very hard through our supply and confidence agreement to be able to get some language approaching that in the fall economic statement. Right. We believe the government should go further and use the term good union jobs. They haven't been willing to do that yet, but we need to see the transparency and accountability on the terms and conditions of that employment as well.
And I just have a few seconds left, so I want to make sure I challenge you and follow up with you as much as I did your colleague. I take your point about the overall savings that Canadians will have with pharmacare, but it does require, at the outset for a number of years, a huge amount of investment from the federal government. And my question to you is against the backdrop sort of like where we sit right now. And basically, do you admit that maybe now is not the time for that level of investment? If the government were to spend $10 billion a plant on every plant over the next few years it's able to secure, plus $11 billion a year on pharmacare, plus the new healthcare money it spent, what in fact is happening with inflation will get worse. There is no economist that will disagree with that. Do you admit that some of the priorities you've identified for the government may have to take a back seat for a little while?
Well, look, I really do think that pharmacare is important for people who are struggling right now, and that is something government should be moving ahead with. What we've said in the supply and confidence agreement is that we need to get the legislative infrastructure for pharmacare up and ready by the end of the year. So it's not the spending commitment yet. There is some flexibility around that. I think we need to know more about the terms and conditions of the federal government's plan to attract clean tech companies and players who are important for the new energy economy that is coming, in order to weigh those numbers against each other. As we just saw, Minister Champagne is not yet willing to attach numbers to their announcement, so it's hard to evaluate those things against each other until we have that information.
Understood. In due course, I'm sure we're all waiting for
Indeed.
that. Mr. Singh, Mr. Hallan rather, and Mr. Blakey, thank you very much, both of you, for making the time for the discussion. Jasraz Singh Hallan and Daniel Blakey.